Hello and welcome to the power of low-code automation. So let's go ahead and get started. So for those of you following along at home, if you would like to get the slides, you can get them from the website, thebimsider.com, or click on that QR code to find all of the goodies that we'll be talking about here today in this session. A little bit for the agenda. There'll be a quick introduction. What is low code? How about APIs? What are they? When should we do some automation? As well as some automation in action. Actually got those in reverse, but you know what I'm seeing. It's on the screen. Some final thoughts and then questions. So let's dive right in. So we'll start off with some introductions. Always awkward to talk about yourself. So this is me, Carl Storms, Technical Success Manager at Newforma. I've been in the industry for way longer than I'd like to admit. And you can see all of my lovely credentials there on the slide, but you're not here to learn about me. You're here to learn about low code. So I always like to start with a little bit of tailored expectations, morning caffeine. I'm from the Great White North up in Canada. I love me some Timmy's, but Starbucks will do. But not everyone has the same caffeine requirements as I do, so you may have some different options for how you like to get your caffeine in the morning. Very same thing for this presentation. So for me, I work at Newforma. Specifically, I spend a lot of time in Newforma Connect, so my automations tend to be around that area. And particularly, these are some of the things that I like to tie together to work with my automations. But again, for you, it may be different. So while the automations and the workflows I talk about in this presentation may not fit exactly what you're looking for, the ideas, the tools, and how to get there certainly should help. So we start off by understanding what is low-code automation, or just low code, really. So is it easier coding? But then if it's easier coding, what is in fact coding? So coding, or if we want to speak properly, programming, well, according to Wikipedia, and all factual things come from Wikipedia as we know, it's really about getting those algorithms. Or if you want to get cut to the chase, coding. Program is coding. We use some language, we type in some syntax, we get a computer to do something. So you'll notice as we go through this presentation that coffee is definitely a theme. And hey, I like coffee. What can I say? I also really like Terry Tate. If you know who Terry Tate is, sit back. You'll love this. If you've never met Terry Tate, you're in for a little treat. Don't be this guy, by the way.
Hey, Laura.
Hey, Paul.
Don't be Paul. Or Laura. No coffee.
Hey, buddy.
Whoa! You know you can't bring that weak ass stuff up in this Humpty Bumpy. You killed a Joe. You make some more. You know that, baby.
Never mess with Terry. So this brings us back around to why is programming like coffee. Long time ago, I was on a podcast with my dear friend Bill Debevic, and he said it best when he said, think of programming like getting a cup of coffee in the morning. So the idea is that you really have to take all of what you assume is happening out of the equation and really think of it logically. So for example, do you drink coffee? Simple question. If the answer is no, well, we're done. Now, if you're like me and you do enjoy coffee, then we get a little more complex. So how much coffee is in the pot? Well, if there's none, we make a new pot. That routine is pretty self-explanatory. Now, if it's half full, this is like the perfect equation because there's enough for me to take a drink, leave some for someone else, and I'm free and clear. Now, this is where it starts to get a little murky. There's some. So I can fill my cup, but we don't want Terry coming for us. We have to remember that we need to make some more. So that's 2 subroutines we have to run. Now, first thing in the morning, we get into the office. Sweet, there's a full pot of coffee. But wait a second. Is this left over from yesterday? Is there anybody else here? No? All right, perfect. I can drink up and carry on my happy way. But maybe it is. This seems awful cold. Now, another question. Do I have time to make a new pot? Yes? All right. Run the new pot routine. No? Off to the microwave we go. Now, we did all that. We got our coffee, but did we ever stop to think, do we have a cup? True story. Got into the hotel room yesterday, traveling all morning, desperately needed a coffee, set up the little in-office or in hotel coffee pot. I put the cup in the wrong spot. coffee everywhere. Needless to say, I did not have a cup. True story. I will never forget that subroutine again. So how does this all tie in to our friend low code? So according to IBM, it's a visual approach to developing software. Read between the lines, faster way to develop through minimal hard coding. That's the key there. We want that minimal hard coding. So here are some of the tools that we can use for low code, and this is just a very small sampling, but ones that I've used, I've worked with. You'll see something called Fluxscape, OpenNoodle, and Noodle. Those are all variants of Noodle, which is a very cool open source low code platform. I like it because it reminds me a lot of Dynamo. A lot of great tools up here, though. I'll talk about AppSmith later on. Work, it looks like WK, but there's a little R in there. Also a great one that's very reasonably priced. A lot of great tools in here. And you really just need to sort of pick the one that is your favorite. So here is a quick screenshot of what you might do with AppSmith. Again, we'll talk about this a little bit later on. Perhaps you're working with backend. I like this one again because it has that sort of Lego block scratch if you've ever worked with your kids on learning programming, but a way to tie things together without having to actually know the syntax. This is Noodle. Great open source tool. And again, once you get into it, if you're familiar with Dynamo, I think you'll really like it. And Work, as I mentioned later, again, it kind of has that visual programming, that Grasshopper, that Dynamo feel, but it really allows you to put things in place. And while all of these have free options, Work is a paid option. They give you, I think it's $35 in credits a month for your free option, but everything is done on a transaction. So one transaction may cost you 2 pennies. So it's a very user-friendly way to do this and to keep an eye on your budget, especially when you're starting out or prototyping. So how about no code? Well, no code is we try not to use code, so it requires few, if any, programming skills. I may question that a little bit because if you have no programming skills, you don't know what you're doing wrong. Having a basic understanding of coding, at least at some level, allows you to kind of understand what you're doing. So even if you don't know the syntax or how to write it, you kind of understand how to get from A to B to C, which is definitely beneficial. Some no-code tools. Again, we'll talk about some of these as we go along. Airtable, very popular. If this, then that, make, Zapier, those are great ones to start with. We'll talk about Thunkable. Softer is also really good. Glide. And if you like spreadsheets, but you want something more modern than Excel or Google Sheets, Rose should be your new go-to. So again, you pick your favorite. Here is Glide. It's designed to make it really easy to create mobile apps. This was a way to actually take a voice note and have AI transcribe it and send you a text with the message. This is Rose. Again, it allows you to do a spreadsheet, but with intelligence built in, like APIs. It's a great tool. Here's Thunkable. We'll talk more about this later, but again, that sort of Lego mentality of stacking things together makes it very easily learned to put things into place so that you can program a simple routine. And Zapier, one of the original sort of easy ways to do no coding. In this case, take an email, send it through to ChatGPT, and have it decipher that email for you. Now, keeping with our theme of coffee, how do we code like we coffee? Well, traditional coding, that's going to be the French press. It's a little more complicated. You got to measure the beans, make sure the water is the right temperature, steep it, plunge it. But if you really like it, if that's your jam, or your Java, as the case may be, you can get a really good cup of coffee exactly how you want it from the French press. Now, low code, that good old reliable $20 drip coffee maker, it's your go-to, it's you use every day. You know, you add a filter, put some water, some pre-ground coffee. The machine does the rest. So you know what you like, you know how to do some tweaks to it, but the machine does most of the work. And for no code, well, we go to instant. But as simple as you can get, some hot water, stir, there we go. Results may vary. Perhaps it's not the best cup of coffee you've ever had in the world, but it gets the job done. So we can kind of see how these all come together. So we've got our traditional coding, that French press. It provides complete control, customization, and allows you to do what you want, but it requires the most effort and skill. Low coding, that drip coffee maker, it's a mix of in between. There is some customization, but there's also some automation. And then no code, again, we got that instant coffee. It makes ease and speed at the cost or the remove of the ability to have great control and customization. What about AI? I'm doing a talk this afternoon on AI, so we'll get to that. But AI is certainly have its place in time, and what we've all heard so much recently is this thing called vibe coding. So the idea to be able to use AI to create the code for you. I've dabbled in this, and I can tell you there's definitely some benefits, but you very quickly run into a wall if you have no understanding of coding. And you'll see lots of claims on social media saying, "Oh, I created an entire app in a business, and I didn't know how to code at all." I'm going to call malarkey. You certainly can get something built. It's great prototyping. It's a great way to help, but it's certainly not sustainable. Now, with AI, we're looking at LLMs, large language models. There are so many of them out there now, and here's are just some of the really popular ones of the day that are out there. We also have a few here, Labophase and Very AI, that actually allow you to ask a question or a prompt to multiple LLMs at the same time, 3 to 6, depending on the version and if you're paying or not. The Verify AI will actually even rate the responses. So it's a really cool tool if you want to get some different thoughts on a question, but not jump between 3 or 4 different LLMs at the same time. And of course, we're all worried about our data. So now we have lots of local options. So all these ones at the bottom that we see here, you can actually run many of the models we see up top on your local machine, as long as the machine has the power. And if you're using the Chat RTX, you need an NVIDIA graphics card. But then it allows you to do stuff so you know the data is safe. It's not connected to the internet. It stays local. So these are good options if you have data that you don't necessarily want to be sharing. And I have to say, hands down, Ollama is the best logo out there. Prove me wrong. There's also a site out there called There's an AI for That, and it quite literally, as far as I can tell, has everything that was ever AI in the world on there. You can search it, you can find it. A lot of new things, the latest and greatest AI tool, tweak, will show up here first before it shows up anywhere else. So if you're looking for something before you recreate the wheel, have a look here. There's also something called the AEC AI Hub, and this is a lot of things specific to AEC. Now you can see here it's a little bit older. It's much more now, but it's 1,200 different tools. They're not AI specific. They're AI adjacent, AI use cases in a particular industry, but they all are tangentially at least related to AEC. So it's a great way to find information. But of course, there's always more. So what about others? So things that sort of pull from all of that. Maybe a little bit of AI, maybe a little bit of no code, low code, put this all in the one spot. You can see things like PyRevit, Speckle, Postman is great if you're doing anything with APIs. But all of these things kind of give you the ability to create anything. Orchestra is great for running your Dynamo graphs. OKPy is part of Orchestra. It's kind of like their version of PyRevit, but it also comes with an AI integration. Very cool. We'll see a little bit of that later. Just as we've seen before, pick your favorite, your flavor du jour. This is the AEC data model extractor, so it comes from the Autodesk Platform Services. It uses the GuelphQL. So it's a very cool way to do that, to extract data using a little bit of programming. You need to have a little bit of programming skills, at least the language, but it's not overly complicated. It allows you to get a lot of really cool things from your data. This is that OKPy. Again, think PyRevit, but you can see the integrated chat box where you can have a conversation with AI as you're working with your Python code generator. This is Postman. Again, I really like Postman if you're working or doing anything with APIs. It's really meant to be testing APIs if you're creating them, but I use it all the time for testing calls, making sure that things work see what information comes back out. If you look real close, you can see there's actually a Chuck Norris joke there on the screen. So there's a lot of really cool things you can do with Postman. And of course, Revit Wizard. This allows us, it's a custom chat GPT or a custom GPT. So it used to be that you had to pay for ChatGPT to get access to the custom GPTs. This one is now available for free. Daniel does an amazing job putting it together. You can see there's really insightful information it puts through, so it has been trained and updated. So it's not just guessing. Daniel has spent a lot of time training it on specific Revit and BIM related questions. So that's kind of the difference between just a general shot in the dark asking a ChatGPT a question versus something like this has been trained specifically to answer Revit questions. So now if we talk about APIs. So what is an API? Again, back to our friends at Wikipedia, an application programming interface, but really what it means is a connection between computers and or programs. So a way that we can access information. So the way that I learned about APIs, this was back in 2018, I think. Mark Thornley, great guy. He explained it through coffees. He allowed me to use it in my presentation because it tied in with the theme. But really the idea is you can imagine you have a customer, you want a coffee, in between you and the coffee is a cashier. So the customer asks the cashier to get a latte, the barista makes a latte, gives it back to the cashier gives it back to a customer. This is the same way that an API works. So you have a software application, it requests something from the API requests it from the other software application, it then sends it back through the API to the software applications. This is how we can make two applications shake hands, if you will. Some of the different APIs that are out there, you'll see that I tend to like to learn things through having a little bit of fun. So there is a cat API on there. There's a Star Wars API. There's a lot of really cool things out there that you can do with APIs. And eventually there has to be an end goal. You have to get to ends to a means. But if you're having fun, especially when you're learning, when you're starting off, I think it sticks and you stick with it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later with our little LOL. So automation in action. So when should we be doing it? So it makes sense, especially if you're new to this world of automation, to start in no code. So if this then that, IFTTT, is a great one to start. They have applets, you can get them off the shelf. You really sort of just plug and play. For example, this one where I can track hours on a Google Drive by simply pressing a button on my phone. I click the button, and then it keeps track. When I started, when I stopped. Very simple interface, but it's one of those things that if you need to do it, I can do it from my phone. I can very easily put it together, and I can run it. So it's an automation, easy to set up, does a task, I don't have to think about it. Make, it's a very similar thing to if this then that. It's a little more modern. In this case, I actually have it pull all of the YouTube podcasts that I publish. And so what it does is it takes every time, so it runs once a week. Every time there's a new podcast or short or something published on the YouTube channel, it will pull a link to that. So I can see the name of it, when it was published, the name, the description, but more importantly, you'll see there on the side, there's an actual link. So I now have an Excel spreadsheet with links to all of my YouTube content that I can simply click on and be taken directly there. Zapier, again, these are all very similar, different flavors of the same punch, or coffee, I guess I should say. And in this case, what I do is anytime I get an email sent to my Gmail, it saves a copy to my G Drive. Again, very simple workflow, but it allows you to do something without having to think about it. And you can see what it looks like. It's two simple things. You connect your Gmail to your Google Drive. You just log in. You give authentication. You give permissions. Very easy to set up. Now, if we move from no code to low code, we can go into Power Automate. Now, this is something that's had different names over the years inside of Microsoft, and some people would say it's very similar to no code, like what we saw with Zapier and Make just recently, or the previous slides. But even Microsoft itself calls it low code because you can get a little deeper in the weeds, and it's just not quite as simple as those other tools. But again, same idea. Now anything that comes to my work email, I save a copy to my work OneDrive. Same workflow, same ability to pull it in place. And again, it can be helpful to do that. And as you can see, it's a little more complex, the back end, how he put it into place, how he tied together, which means low code versus no code. There is a little bit more automation we can do. You'll also notice that it does, if you're paying, I had the trial at the time, allows you to bring in Copilot so you can ask AI questions about what you're trying to do, which again can be helpful. So LOL, I talked about this earlier. Laugh, observe, learn. So learn through doing, enjoying, and laughing. So Thunkable. We talked about this a little bit earlier. This is a great tool, and I made a random cat picture generator. It's on my phone. It's still on my phone to this day. I'm having a bad day. I can click on it and get a cat picture. And as you can see, it's really simple. It's that, again, that Lego, that Scratch, that easy to click together. And all it is simply, if you click a button, load this URL. It's a dead simple API where every time you call that API, it gives you a random cat picture. Can't get any easier than that. And this is essentially what it looks like. The nice thing about Thunkable is it allows you to make the UX, the user interface, very easily, and you can deploy it to your phone. So this is what it looks like, and here's actually it working on my phone. So I click it, it opens up, and boom, random cat pictures on my phone whenever I want. And who doesn't need a random cat picture from time to time? They're adorable. Now, of course, we can't spend all day looking at random cat pictures, so we must carry on. Although, perhaps, maybe just a few more. That one I did after this one. I was learning how to access APIs, specifically web APIs in Dynamo, and I thought, why not have random cat pictures? So yes, I can do it in Dynamo as well. But from that fun, I learned something. So I needed a Dynamo script, and when I did this the first time, it was before AI, yes, all of it archaic 2 and some odd years ago. I had to go to things like Stack Overflow and get code. And then if it didn't work, I had to go back to Stack Overflow and ask questions. Oh, how rough we had it just 3 years ago before we could do all this with AI. But essentially what I needed to do was I needed to convert that image that the API was pulling from a web image to a local image. I couldn't get Dynamo to display a web image. It had to be local. So that means that I had to convert this URL to a local web image. And so I Googled, went to Stack Overflow, I found this code, but it wasn't working. And what was missing was the R. You needed the R in front of this whole big string, which is basically just a link to where the image is. I didn't know that. I had to ask a question again. AI would have made this much easier. But that was the lesson I learned from having fun, was Python and how I used R to direct to that location. This also led me down the road of using headless Dynamo. And basically that means that I can run this particular text file without actually opening Dynamo. And all you do is convert that exact line of text into a .bat file or a .bat file. Nothing changed except when I save it as a .bat instead of a .txt. And if you're not using Notepad++, shame on you. So as you can see, this is that same script, but now I've saved it as a txt file. I come in here, and now I want to see 3 random cat pictures. The first, we locate the DCLI, so the Dynamo Command Line Interface. This is part of the Dynamo that you download, whether it's Sandbox or with Revit. It comes with every version. You just find out where that's located on your computer. Then you put the -O, which is telling it to open what comes next, which is the exact location of your Dynamo graph. So it's that simple. This is where my DCLI is. I want to open it, and this is the graph. And if you have more than one line, it executes the first graph, then the second graph, and the third graph, etc. You save that as a BAT, and you run it, and this is what you see. You get a pop-up on your screen, and every time one happens, it runs next, runs next, runs next. But we want to get a little fancy, so we can change the icon. So we click on it, add an icon, 3 random dog pictures, not just cats here, folks. We can also minimize the window. So instead of normal window, it will run in the taskbar, so you never actually see anything. You'll just be sitting there, click the button, and it pops up random dog pictures. How adorable. So now, random cat pictures or random dog pictures. How great could your day be? So now to get a little bit serious, we've done some things, we've learned some things, now to use that in the real world of our day-to-day work. So for me, I want to look at some Nuforma Connect project data. And while inside of the platform there's lots of data, sometimes we can't see it the way we want. That's why we have an open API. So I use Dynamo and a package called DynaWeb to access that information. It's the type of coding that I knew a little bit about, so Dynamo is the way I go. And then I extract it to Excel. There's a couple ways to access or extract data from Excel. You can do the data.export to Excel, which is an Excel node, or the data.openxml export Excel, which is an open standard. This is the one I use because it just seems to work. And you can export Excel, you open Excel, it works fine. The export to Excel works, but from time to time you have to have Excel installed. So if you don't have Excel, it doesn't work. And Excel over the course of time, or Microsoft over the course of time, will change where it installs its exe file, and it can make your graph break. So I find that the the data.openxml export works best for me. And then it gives us this output. So I'm able to pull all of this data the way that I need to see it, and I can see it in this Excel file, but it's not the prettiest. So then what we can do is we can actually keep that base file. So when I run it, it exports that data. But then I create a list that is prettified. Yes, that's a real word. That I've made look good. And then what we do is we have it, so we have it all set up. It's got color schemes. It'll even do those pivot tables like we saw there. So now it looks a little bit nicer. The key is we need these two to talk to each other. So we take that one that we've made look good. We go to our get data from file, Excel workbook, and we link it into the one that's updated every time we run Excel. Then what we want to do is say these is where we want to get our data. We load those into, so we're taking the data from that chart, we're loading it into this pretty version. And then what we want to do is tell it that every time we open this pretty version, it is going to refresh the data. So manually we could hit that little refresh all button and it would pull those 30 or 40 different things and refresh it. But by clicking that button and saving, remember you have to save, that means every time I open that pretty version it gets it. So I hit that little headless dynamo graph, it runs in the background. After break I open up this good looking Excel file, it will automatically update, pull the latest data, and now I have this nice data dashboard to find all the data that I need. Of course, it's not just Nuforma Connect. You can do this with Autodesk Platform Services, formerly Forge. They have 13, at least the last time I was working with it, 13 different APIs you can tie into. So it's a similar graph that you run in place. Both of these things require DynaWeb. This is a blessing and a curse. And I say that because DynaWeb is one of those packages that's put together by someone in the industry that loves what they do and puts it together. This is several years old. The creator has moved on to do bigger and better things. And unfortunately, that means that this no longer works with Dynamo 3.0 or higher. It was broken when they moved to .NET 8. So this is why I need to talk about AppSmith later on. But if you're using an older version of Dynamo, this still works. And so essentially you can see we've got the Forge, or APS as it works now. There's also a Postman collection, as they call it. So this was all put together inside of Postman, which makes it really easy to go there or to go to the GitHub page and download the information you need to work with this API. Now for me, the data that I was working with at the time of doing this, or that I still work with, is in BIM 360. This workflow works the same for the ACC workflow, but I was working with BIM 360. And so essentially what you want to do is you want to go ahead and grab that data. You can download the set from that Postman collection. Follow the workflows we see here on the screen. Make sure all your references are in place, and then refer to the BIM 360 API call for more details. You want to use version 2. The old one is deprecated. In fact, I don't even think you can access it anymore. So you want to make sure you're using that version 2. And then we pull that data out into an Excel spreadsheet. The other thing you have to keep in mind, a little bit different working with the Autodesk product, is that you have to get specific project data. So I'm pulling data from a specific project. And the issue data and the user data are in two separate repositories. So I need to pull two things and then sort of merge them together in the back end. So now I've done it with Newformer Connect, I've done it with BIM 360, now I want to marry the two together. So first we run a graph that pulls my Newformer Connect data, we saw that. Then we pull our graph that runs our BIM 360 data. I'm going to pause for the cause here for a moment. The one big thing that's different with the Autodesk protocol is you need an API and a token for both Newformer Connect and for the BIM 360. The BIM 360 refreshes every 60 minutes. So you have to make sure you have that code current when you run this in place. So it's a little bit more tedious. If you're doing it once a month like I was, it's not the end of the day and the world. If you're doing it all the time, there is a workflow out there to automate the authentication so that you don't have to do that every time, but it's a bit of a hassle. And then I pulled the data from Connect, I've pulled the data from BIM 360, now I review it in Excel, and you can see here's the issues for a particular project for Newformer Connect, and here's the issues for that same project, but we're stored in BIM 360. I can now see them in one Excel spreadsheet. So the low-code multi-tool, AppSmith. This was my solution when I needed to start working with information and I can no longer access it inside of Dynamo because DynaWeb didn't work in 3.0 or newer. So basically AppSmith is this great tool. They have a very generous free tier. I've never had to use the paid tier for what I do, but basically you use this tool to make your interface. You can use JavaScript to code things that they don't have built in. And basically that's what I did. And I know enough about JavaScript to say that I know it, but I'm not an expert by any means. And now with AI, anyone can do it. So the editor, the UI, basically you can drag and drop in how you want it to look. Do you want text inputs? Do you want buttons? Whatever. You can drag that in and make it look pretty good, pretty easily. And if you click on something like this particular table, you can see it allows us to customize it on the code end. JS, that's the JavaScript, they call it JS, it's an object, JS object. This is where you can bring in some of that coding to do things like, for example, loop over multiple API calls. And you can see this was some code that AI helped me generate to be able to loop through some code. Queries are basically API calls. Same thing that you were doing earlier in Postman, you can set that up in here and run it. And you can see it has some intelligence, so it understands once you do a call that says, for example, hub AI.text. There's earlier on a process that will actually pull that information from an input, and it stores it so that it actually pulls that information. You can store data in a database, a data warehouse, if you will. I've never done that way. I always use the API calls, but both are there and available. And this is the really cool part, you can deploy it. So again, you can deploy it for free. You have to invite people to your hub in that scenario. It's not open for people to do. You can't sell it, but if you're using it as an internal tool, that's probably not what you want to do. And if we click on this, you can see this brings a bunch of information from my Newformer Connect project. I can deploy it. I can send this link to anyone on my project team. And essentially, you can see that there's just blank data. So if I scroll down a little bit further, I can go here and pull the project I want to get data from. You'll see it instantly fills up and pulls in all of that data. It also tells me which project I'm working on. Again, all this is automated. We can also go down, you can see down here, we can do some other things. So with this same one, and I'll be the first to admit my UI could use some updating. But inside of this, I can add people into a project. I can create new projects. I can add images to projects. I can add people. I can delete models and sheets from projects. So I can do a lot of the admin-based stuff and see a lot of data about our projects all from in this. And what's the price for using it for free? That little built by AppSmith down the bottom. So it's a very cool tool with a lot of power. Now, you can also go a little bit further when you start piling things on top of each other. So a while ago, January 2024 to be exact, I did this something called the 100 Days of AI. But part of that was learning to do things. And so one of my projects was this Greenwood project, and I now use it every time I'm testing or prototyping something. So essentially I made this landing page for this fictitious community, and you can see we've got this landing page. some events that are coming up. But the real cool thing is we have the ability to have these people that are volunteering that's based off of Google Sheets. We can actually have a little AI, that green button there, and we have our forms. So it's this one thing that has a bunch of stuff put together. So first, I created the landing page, put it on GitHub, and then I used different versions of AI, you can see them up there, to make that website or that landing page with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. All the images were created with AI before it got as good as it is now, but using Dolly and Microsoft Designer. I embedded the Microsoft Forms on the website. I used AI to tell me how to do that. I used Google Sheets as the backbone for those Google Forms. I set up a automation with Make and Slack so that anytime somebody fills out one of those Google Forms, basically offers to volunteer, I get a Slack notification with all of that data. I then put that Google Sheets embedded into my website using that SheetDB. Great tool, by the way. So that now I basically have a website that shows and is live updated with all of that Google Sheets information. I then have the form sent to my Gmail using Zapier and Gmail so I know when somebody's updated the form. And the last thing, and this is the coolest, this is that low-code tool called BuildShip, but it allowed me to very easily build a chatbot that is only reading information on that Google Sheet. So someone can go on there and they can say, hey, I like dogs. Is there a volunteer opportunity for me? And it will read all the information on the Google Sheet, those that are looking for volunteers, those that are volunteers, and it will answer based on the information. Again, all of that done on a shoestring budget with AI and little coding knowledge. So now, when do we automate? Well, now, of course, I have this thing, I'm going to write some code, it's going to take over everything, I'm going to have so much free time. Oh, wait a minute. Am I really? Now, if you don't know who Randall Munroe is, XKCD, amazing, great, go look him up. So we talked about our ways of automating. Now let's dig a little deeper. So remember, sometimes the answer is not to do it. Maybe there's a solution out there. You went to that, there's an AI for this and found something. You're going to buy it. Sometimes automation is not the answer. As you can see, there's a solution that exists. It's a one-off task. You don't have any resources. And by resources, I mean skill, time, or money. We'll come back to those resources. So yes, we should automate. We've got the green light here. Which way are we going to go? The no code or low code? Well, let's start with no code. So we're prototyping. We're trying to get something quickly together. We want to deploy it quickly, simple, repetitive process, and we have some resources. We don't have all the skills, all the time, or all the money, but we have a little bit of at least some of them. Low code, prototyping, but fine-tuning. You know, we saw that it could work with no code. We want to get a little bit better. We want a little bit of customization. We're upping the complexity. And again, we have some of those skills, probably 2 of the 3, to make this work. And then maybe automate. This is code. So sometimes you have in-house skills, sometimes you don't. You know, that medium to high customization, more complex tasks. We need to get more level of control. And we need all of the resources. We need all of those things in place. Otherwise, we won't be able to complete the task using traditional coding. So is it worth it? Well, again, our friend Randall lets us know, depending on how much time you're going to save over the course of a day and how many times you're going to use it, over the course of 5 years, it explains it. And this is true. This is actual facts. So again, he's funny and he's knowledgeable. So some final thoughts as we're bringing it in here for a landing. Remember the steps. So first you have to have a problem. Everything is easier. I know it's going to sound funny, but everything is easier when you have an actual real problem. Following along with a tutorial or following along what someone else says kind of helps, but if you have a real problem, you have a vested interest, and you just learn better. It's like taking notes. You need to solve the problem. Again, also sometimes sounds counterintuitive, but you need to know the outcome. Otherwise, you can't create an app to do that. Remember, this isn't to solve the problem. This is to take a problem that is tedious and automate it. So you create the app, the workflow, the tool, the graph, whatever it might be. You test it, and then you've got a working solution. If you don't, again, repeat 1 through 4 steps until you do. Like anything, the more you do it, the easier it's going to get. So once you've built that first automation, you're not starting from scratch. You have some workflows, you have some lessons learned, different tools, but they're going to have similar processes. You're going to be familiar. It's just like driving someone else's car, or to keep our coffee theme, making coffee at your friend's house. They have a different drip coffee maker, but you can probably figure it out. So when we're looking at low code and no code automation, we need to understand our needs, your needs, the problem's needs. Why are you doing it? If you don't know that, you're dead in the water. Effort versus benefit. How much time is it going to take me to get this to work? And again, sometimes you're going to put more effort into it than you're going to get out of it. I'll say early on, having fun, learning, sometimes, you can take some time that you're not going to get back. But there's going to get to a point where you're going to need to be able to get things done and to be getting value out of that. Otherwise, you're costing time, you're not saving time. Efficiency versus control. Again, how quick do I want to get it out there? Am I prototyping? Versus is this going to be something that I want to run all the time? Maybe I start with a Dynamo graph, then I move to PyRevit, and then eventually I like it so much I'm going to pay to either have someone create me a Revit add-in or someone in-house that has the skills is going to create the add-in, which is more stable and more ease of use than the other two. And same thing, innovation versus experimentation. JavaScript's been around for a long time. We've got a guy that knows how to do JavaScript. Maybe we're going to use JavaScript. Or I heard this vibe code and think it's great that I can just talk to my computer and it'll make it for me, whatever your level of comfort is. Now, a reminder, automation is not always the answer. If you just need a latte and there's a wonderful local shop around the corner, maybe it makes sense to just go around the corner and get that latte. All right. Any questions? All of my contact information. And again, if you didn't do it, you can go back to the beginning. You can take a look at the QR code or just go to the bimsider.com under speaking sessions and find the one for AEC TechCom 2025. And that's where you'll find this information, the presentation that we're talking about right here, as well as some resources, just a PDF of some resources that we talked about, as well as some AI prompts. I do a session a little bit later on AI, so I've mixed the two together. So I hope you enjoyed this. Any questions, you can certainly leave them below in the video link, or if you're watching this live, ask away. Thank you very much.